DOGE is dead. Elon Musk's attempted infiltration of the American government has been halted 8 months earlier than originally planned. The Department of Government Efficiency was disbanded this week in a move which is perhaps unsurprising given the always chaotic Trump administration. As someone who leans very far to the left, I may be inclined to take this news as an outright win. But when I look at the story on ground news, I can get a more holistic understanding of this story. Unfortunately, the end of DOGE is not entirely comprehensive. I see that outlets on the left are highlighting DOGE's lack of transparency and generally destructive approach. But ground news also shows me new information that I would have otherwise missed. Right-leaning reporting points out that DOGE actually lives on, with its policies and personnel now existing in other parts of the Trump administration. So as much as I would love to say that DOGE was an outright and embarrassing failure, ground news helps me understand this is not entirely true. This is a great example of why I love ground news. It's not that I want to read more conservative news. I want the full story, including the information that doesn't just reinforce my own personal desires or opinions. Viewers of this channel may have noticed a pattern this year. Ground News has been my only sponsor. That's because I'm not interested in promoting some plastic gadget of the month or the latest attention-sucking mobile game. I genuinely believe in the work that the team at Ground News is doing, and I believe more people should be using the service. Unlike other platforms, they don't push or suppress stories to influence your perception of the world. Their platform prioritizes giving readers full transparency on today's issues by pulling in the world's perspectives on them, providing sources, histories of failing fact checks, and even who's benefiting from you believing their version of the story. When it comes to news, finding the truth is getting more difficult every day. I sincerely believe Ground News can help us right the ship on this whole issue. Ground News is fully independent and supported by readers like us, but I partnered with them to get my viewers 40% off the same Vantage plan I've been using. Go to ground.news/horses, click the link in my description, or scan my QR code to get unlimited access for $5 a month. By signing up, you're directly supporting the work I do here and your ability to think critically. To reach for hope in our current moment may be for the corpse of a dead man who wishes to smell the blooms of summer. It may be for the ant who wishes to fly like a raptor. To reach for hope may feel like such an impossibility. There are tremendous hurricanes of forces destructing hope at every daybreak. The men of power and capital wish to maintain us as a species not of forward individuation, but of complacency. These powered few wish to puppet our lives on the strings of their money and ambitions. We have too been scorned by past visions of hope, which have grown weakly, which have been smothered and borne nothing unto our souls, which have faltered with time and grown to poison our ideas. To regard images of the world, we are met with each day as the darkest night, so extremely that the concept of a better future emerges more fictional than real. Amidst these assaults, we are castles of hope which have been sieged and invaded, corrupted, pillaged, and raped on our inside, perhaps. But our great walls still stand, and our duty is to expel the invaders rather than capitulate entirely. Attacks on our goodness, we must remember, are weak and fallible when pushed against our truly unstoppable human spirit. There is no such violence which is so powerful that it may defeat the infinite future. Hope can prevail, but we must choose it so. The first of our priorities must be to understand hope truly, earnestly, and deeply. Let us reject the notion of hope as some passive, transient thing which exists with all the gust of a stone sitting in a garden. To hope is not to lay idly and expect great outcomes, or to anticipate goodness as some self-born event. This is not hoping, this is wishing and expecting. Hope is not a task for the idle. It must have the dimension of doing, of taking part in the world and acting with the Spirit. Hope and action are inseparable parts of one another. Only from hope may we act. Within true hope, we find a determination and willingness to engage in the world, to build our own futures. Hope is a path to the greater place, but it is a path we must elect to walk on. It is not a small feeling, but an activity. Hope shall further not be some temporary sensation, satisfied by mundane events. It is much more permanent and profound. It is an openness to the idea of not now, but yet. It is a permanent receptivity to both the pain and glory of the future, to the fullness of the world, and to the fact that within such fullness a good must certainly exist. Reason, O reason, and logical thought, these are things which have their place in the procedures of our lives, but like anything that nourishes us, too much can spoil. It is a marvel how inconsistently the world acts according to reason and logic. Each and every day we are struck by people and events which come to pass in spite of what should have happened. Logic cannot predict all things. It cannot predict the newest of things, those newest of things which spring into existence every moment we breathe. In hope, we find ourselves prepared to thrive when reason falters, to be ready for a future which will surely defy the mechanical realities of our today. Hope is an openness to all things. It can hear frequencies which reason cannot. It is the assurance that despite any odds, the events of today need not add up to those of tomorrow. We should not hope for some target. This is not hope, in fact, but to hope for such precision is to wish. The world mutates and changes around us, and so our hope must be flexible. Let us not pollute our hopes with specificity, and let us instead marvel at the simplicity of what is not yet. A loving wife, dear friends, a grander home. These specific wishes are made of crude material, and they invite fear when fate seems to whisper that they are further than we once felt. These things are a mask of what we truly yearn for, that is happiness. The hope for simple happiness is not only adequate, but it is magnificent. This desire is unpolluted, and it is one which flexes and bends as the winds of the world move upon it. With hope, the vague and the abstract meet us with great utility. It is too often that we approach hope in a backwards direction. We must not ask what we hope for, but where we hope from. A man loses hope not because of circumstances without, but because of those within. We must seek for a version of not yet which is strong and unfragile to the world around it. We must seek hope as a fundamental way of being rather than a way of handling what already is. We should understand the world and ourselves as places where hope can exist. A future with flexible and permanent hope forms a steady ground under our feet and a road in front of our eyes. We may carry forward as active participants in the world, onwards towards some great future, some great and abstract paradise that is gorgeous because of its indefinite shape. Each day I am struck by the individualism of our Western society. There is so much motivation in this world, and it is so much focused on oneself. But of course it can only be this way. The individual must achieve, must better themselves, must succeed for their own sake. Hope is not an individual act. It is the song of the collective. Inherent to hope is the expectation of events and circumstances which are out of one's own control. Hope demands not for one but for all, and there it has such beauty. It is a recognition of what one must do, of the possibility to seize one's future, while still understanding the multitude of forces which act upon that same future. It is to welcome all that may be, everyone that may be. To hope is to appreciate fully the texture of a society. Hope is not a lit match, but it is a fire for all to share. Still, our plague of hopelessness stems not only from misunderstanding. No, our depression finds its birth in many dark and separate winters. The world around us screams each day, "Why hope? What could you hope for?" And it assaults us with grand images of suffering and despair, of the goblins which feed off our collective sorrow. These goblins have implored each man in violence and capital to abandon living in favor of surviving. We are told that now is all, that the future is a bleak story which has already been written for us. Work, toil, and worry for your today so that we may abdicate tomorrow to our so-called elites. It is easier for the capitalist to function when we only have circular days, lives which exist only to fulfill their own needs. If each man lets his days become eclipsed by toil, monopolized by its own nutrition, if we let our days offer only sustenance for themselves, the great gods of capital find their own tasks made immensely more simple. What action can we give to our not yet? What problems could we create in the grand plans of the elites if our present demands us entirely? The goblin of fear is another enemy of hope. Within a climate of fear, we find ourselves obedient and without the courage to voice for progress. Fear infects us to our cores. It infects even our ability to think. It deteriorates the imagination, and suddenly our what-ifs are mired in doom. It is a suffocation which mutilates the vast infinity of our futures into a narrow, single road. The action of fear may offer us a sustainable future, but it is one which has no horizon and no openness to the new. Without an openness, there can be no hope. Hope is too an assault on our sensibilities because it is a fundamentally creative act. It is the invitation and openness to the new. It is the glory that something shall be built which resembles in no way what already exists. But our world with its trappings discourages this radical form of creativity, and it instead insists on the new being simply a permutation of the old. Our world begs us for the new only insofar as it is an acceptable substitute or iteration on what came before it. The mutilation of our hope is a side effect of this idea. We fear hope because it requires us to not iterate, but to truly create. The hopeful future is not a future which aligns with our impressions of the present. It is something new. Our spirit of hope has further been distracted by the clumsy prescriptions of optimism and pessimism, both of which alleviate man from his responsibility to act. These modes of thinking are the jurisdiction of the lazy. To be optimistic or pessimistic is to accept the future as already prescribed. Things will either be good or they will be bad, and so what reason does either person have to act? What will be done is already done. The optimist sees the world as a place of happiness, and he ignores the misfortune. Hope acknowledges that we do not know what the world will bring, but that there is a vast expanse which we can harness to bring about goodness, despite whatever else our days have in store. Pessimism, like optimism, is too built on the rejection of possibility. For the pessimist, the world is a prison of despair. These thinkers assume that all hopes end in disappointment, and in doing so, they mistake shallow expectation for the truly infinite and ever-flexing spirit of hope. These runs of thought are brothers, and each offer us only a locked room for our world. It is an easy place, and maybe it is even a comfortable one, but it rejects the fluidity, the chaos of time, which is the bedrock of hope. Even equipped as best as we can be against such a depression, all people will encounter moments and periods of hopelessness. Goals slip into the distance. Perceived realities seem to dissolve like mists into a pond. Such is our life. The great tragedy of our days does not come from a loss of hope, but from the loss of an ability to hope, the loss of having anything in this grand world for which to hope. In those darkest hours, a future paradise seems so distant and untouchable that we forget that paradise can even be an option. We see the future and we see no possibilities. There we have not lost only our destination, but we have too lost our map. It is in precisely these days which we must understand hope as not a tool of life, but an existent part of the world within us and without us. The world, no matter what turmoil it contains, will always have room for hope. The future possesses all, and the stirring of days can never be strong enough to render this untrue. Our world is like a great forest in this way. Even through the darkest of winters, trees drop seeds and new life creates itself. The darkest and most crowded forest from which the canopy blocks all light, such a place still creates new life. In the deepest part of this forest, a man may look to the ground and he will invariably, infinitely find it littered with acorns. There will always be room for the new. Next, I ask who about us would enjoy the feeling of fear? Of course there is none, but of course fear comes parcel with hope. To hope is to embrace the unknown, and within the unknown there always lurks fear. We must take fear with hope in the way that we take all other fear. The summer brings warmth and ecstasy, and it brings wasps and spiders. To stand under the night sky and stare at the stars is to marvel at the beauty of our universe. It is also to stand among the most nocturnal and hunting predators. I can scarcely imagine a more pristine time than a day in the sun and a night under the stars. I cannot imagine a more pristine thing than hope. There is indeed an inherent darkness to hope. It springs forward from pain, suffering, and misery. These things must exist for hope to exist. The society of utopia has no utility for hope. Why should hope be when all is perfect? But it is a fact that such a place does not exist. Our world has texture, so much beautiful and painful texture if we can only see it. Just like hope requires us to be open to what is not yet, hope requires openness towards what is. We must insist on hope despite what is around us and because of what is around us. Inviting hope is too inviting darkness. So to have hope, we must be brave. As hope becomes action and we set out to begin something anew, we can have no idea of the results or consequences. The specter of guilt may emerge from the shadows of brave action, and such is the heavy burden that man must carry when he walks with hope. Oh, it is such a heavy burden to know that we may act well and create pain, but it pales next to the heft of a rancid life, of existence that rejects possibility. Without possibility, we may jump into our own graves, and I should much rather grapple with guilt than a living death. Guilt we can handle. How greatly we can handle guilt is a marvel of humanhood. We are powerful against guilt. Humans have been granted the incredible and often ignored gift of forgiveness. In forgiveness to ourselves, we recognize that the world creates unforeseeable events and consequences, and we revitalize our openness to the new. We restore our ability to hope. To forgive is not only a talent of human, but a necessity. One can imagine the infinite paralysis which would occur should we refuse our right to forgive. To ignore forgiveness is to sever the branches of our tree right at the stump. It is to reject possibility and to welcome inaction. Forgiveness is the domain of the past and hope of the future, and together we have eternity. We hope, so we act, so we may forgive, and we hope anew. We have much anxiety. Let hope be its opposite and its antidote. Anxiety is a fear of things which have not yet come to pass. But why must we fear these things? Why must we insist on the badness of the future? Let us instead rejoice as we welcome a spring from our darkest winters. Let us look to the future as something we can build, not something which builds itself around our complacence. The past can inform our future, but again we fall into the snare of the bad. We regret that things did not go one way, and we assume that they will continue to fall in that same direction. We become incarcerated by the past, ignoring that all of history is the story of change. What once was need not be again. What exists exists only to change. The rain brings blooms. The bad may be the seed of the good. We can say that the world is a lonely place and that it acts as it will. What an easy way this is to live, easy and destructive. The hopeless man is the inactive man who fulfills his own beliefs in the world. He allows the world to enact violence unto him, and he welcomes his own crushing, only to then view the entirety of life from under the stone of oppression. But of course the world is cruel and torment if he has lied down to welcome its violence. Instead, let us work. Let us lift and toil into the world so we may find hope and strike down easy pessimism. All of the world is a force, and it is one which we must meet with strength, strength which springs from hope. To have hope is to be free. What man of us is all-knowing and all-seeing? What arrogance and foolishness it requires to say that one's future is a locked door. The world is not so obedient as to obey our expectation that all will be the same as it ever was. We live an infinite sea of possibilities. Even our own selves remain a mystery forever. Who knows what we will do as the seasons and years turn over and over? Who can say what butterflies our cocoons create? How we respond to events tomorrow may very well be unfathomable to ourselves of today. When we recognize this, suddenly we know we are not on some predetermined course. We are not objects waiting for our next rebound. It is through a profound hope that we know today is not tomorrow, that this year is not next. Suddenly we become free beings, unshackled by arrogance and prophecy. Let us live our life like a great team during a season of baseball, that excruciatingly long sport which offers moments of boredom, peace, strife, and exuberance, that sport wherein loss is acceptable and destruction is not. Let us lose the games we lose, and let us win those we should. Borne out over the toils of 162 games, our defeats vanish into the summer, and they do not mire our winning season. It is on the wings of hope which we can carry ourselves forward. It is with hope that our defeats do not defeat us. How lovely it would be if discovering hope were an easy thing. What a paradise this could bring us. How proud I could be if I discovered the algorithm for hope. If only hope could be plucked like a ripe apple from the trees of our days. There is so much fear in this world, so much pain, there is such grand suffering that to search for hope where there is none requires a fundamental realignment within the soul. No person can say that hope is easy. Hope is a great and difficult labor. But it is a great stupidity to declare strife as reason for inaction. So let us have hope forever, and in those most grotesque of our days, when none can be found, let us still hope for hope itself.